yes, we do need to look at some form of licensing or possibly managed fishing for Airbnbs, just so that we can manage the number so that it doesn't just get out of hand and then be open in India. I do think that's one of the things that we are looking at, how we can better manage things like Airbnb going forward.
We've got a few messages going around for your prizes. This one, Ian says, is it right we play adding back on as well as fuel duty? So it's not just fuel duty, of course there's that on top of it. We're taxed twice in theory, aren't we?
We are, absolutely. But I think, the fact is that's all money that goes into the treasury that is used to then pay for our hospitals and doctors and our schools and our roads and our police and our defence and everything else. So if we didn't come through that, where else would we get that money from? And these are always difficult decisions that we have to make. Where do we raise the tax? Whether it's from to pay for the public services that everyone wants, and VAT is part of that equation.
Finally, flower picking. We've been talking about this this morning, the daffodil farm in Cornwall. We've got a reporter out in Brady there to see for himself how much any he can pick, the seasonal working experience, how everyone's out there. Brexit's been blamed for problems with, fewer workers on the fields. Do you think that's fair?
Well, it goes absolutely down, but I don't think it's the full picture. I mean, I have a lot of personal interest and experience of this because my wife comes from the Isles of Sea and grew up on a daffodil farm in the Isles of Sea, and her family still grows flowers there. So I've done my fair bit of daffodil picking over the years as well. So I do know just how hard work it is. Clearly, the ending of free movement, which is what we as a country and Cornwall as a whole voted for as we left the EU, has had an impact. But one of the things I've worked on with the other Cornish MPs is to make sure that flower picking is now included in what's called the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Scheme, which will allow people to come over on a seasonal basis to help our farmers pick flowers. We couldn't get it quite agreed it got agreed in December, so it was quite late for this season, so I know there are going to be some challenges again this year, but going forward from next winter onwards, they will be able to get people from all over the world, not just the EU, but all over the world who want to come and help pick flowers here in Cornwall. So hopefully that will improve things going forward.
It's a bit frustrating it's taking so long though, Steve, because we had this problem with flower pickers last year. Well, so now it's going to happen next year. Why aren't these things, we've had plenty of time since the referendum to sort out how we're going to do this, haven't we?
Well, I think, there has been a pandemic which has had a major impact. There are 6 million EU citizens that applied for settled status to stay here in the UK and work here. 6 million, almost twice as many as predicted. But the challenge was, because we closed down our economy, many of them went home to their home countries back in Europe because of the uncertainty, and clearly at times difficult times like that, we want to be with our families. So they went home, and many of them, because we're still living with restrictions up until very recently, have not yet returned. So I think that is a major factor. We were expecting 6 million people to stay here and work, but many of them went home and haven't returned, and that is actually what caused a lot of the problems that no one could have predicted what was going to happen. So that's why
the rhetoric was all a bit unfriendly though, Steve, wasn't it? Do you think some of these people just went up and left because there were some very bad vibes around Brexit, weren't there? Do you think it could have been managed a little bit better?
Well, I've always been absolutely clear that we welcome anyone who was living here to stay and work and live here. That was the very clear message from the government. I've consistently said that if they were living here from anywhere in Europe, then we wanted them to stay and continue to work here and contribute to our country. And as we said, it can't have been that unfriendly if 6 million EU citizens actually applied to stay here. I mean, if they applied to stay here, clearly they felt that they were welcome and wanted to stay. So I'm not sure that really was such a factor as you might be suggesting.
All right, just on the Brexit vein, we got a text here from John saying what happened to the 305 million a week for the NHS as advertised on the side of the Brexit bus.
There's a very easy answer to that.
Yeah.
The NHS is getting £400 a week more now than it was in 2016. So we have kept that promise. We've delivered on that. The core funding for the NHS is now £400 million a week more than it was in 2016. So
why does national insurance have to go up then, Steve, if there's so much more money?
Because of the backlog, because of COVID. Unfortunately, when that money, and actually it was enshrined in law immediately after the 2019 election, the first piece of legislation that the government put in place was to guarantee an increase in NHS funding for the rest of this Parliament, and we've kept that promise. But the cost of the pandemic was huge, and the backlog that was brought up because people were not coming forward to get their scans and their treatments. We've got to deal with that backlog, and that's why for this next 2 or 3 years we've got to put that extra money in to catch up that backlog. I don't think it's right to just sit by and let that waiting grow and grow.
And do you think Trelisk will ever catch up? Because we're seeing queues of 20 or so ambulances most days outside the back door. This extra money is going into the NHS. It doesn't still seem to be enough.
Well, that money hasn't started flowing yet because it only begins to be collected in April. But I meet regularly with the leadership at Trelisk. Things are improving. I know, sometimes it may not seem like it. The situation with ambulances waiting, I think we need to understand exactly why that is happening. Part of it is huge increase in demand, but also some of it is because of the infection control measures that are needed in A&E. Whereas before you would have a crowded waiting room and perhaps people waiting in corridors to be seen. Clearly you can't do that now because of the risk of infection, so people are kept waiting in an ambulance outside rather than be taken into A&E and waiting in the waiting room there, and that's why we see those ambulances waiting. Hopefully, as we come out of the pandemic and continue to lift all of the restrictions, we can end that, and then people will be safe to once again go back into A&E and wait in the waiting rooms, and that will reduce the queue of ambulances that we see. But I think it's important to just recognise why that queue of ambulances is currently necessary.
All right, Steve, finally, constituency business, anything coming in your inbox of interest? Great thing is it's recess this week, so I don't have to go to London, so I get to spend the week at home in Cornwall, which is wonderful. So I'm getting out and about over the next few days and meeting various people and businesses, etc. Usual mixture of stuff coming in, to be honest, about lots around housing again, which I know we've touched on. People still needing help in finding housing, people needing help with their benefits claims. DVLA is still an issue with people getting their driving licences, but we're having a lot of success on that actually. We're getting the licences through quicker than we were, so that does seem to be improving on that front. Steve Double MP for St Austell and Newquay, thanks for your time. BBC Radio Cornwall is now 10:32.
BBC Radio Cornwall.
Welcome to Saturday, James Dundon's Saturday Show.
Hi James, how are you?
Hi James. Hi. Hello. I was in there at 6:30 in the morning. I've never been in the gym that time, I can tell you now. James Dundon, he is very, very naughty. Including the Kerno quiz at 11:20 and 12:20. Let's play the Kerno quiz, and you're good at general knowledge, aren't you, Judith? Good. Get covered in Cornwall. Which street in Truro is now lined with wooden planters?
In Truro for 6 months.
Saturday morning from 10.
You okay?
BBC Radio Cornwall.
Flag at BBC Radio Cornwall. Hello, this is James Dunn with Infidels. Hope you're doing alright. Let's have a look at the wet, windy roads. It's a bit drizzly and miserable out there. Do take care. At the minute, there's temporary lights bobbing Dunmere Road, A389, near the Technology Park. Just allow some time. Hessenford to Seaton, the B3247 is closed for tree felling work. They're still going. St Maur's Ferry not operating due to strong winds. The St Maur's passenger ferry, they've cancelled it for the rest of the day. Everything else seems okay at the minute. No accidents or incidents, but obviously with the weather like it is, if you do spot anything, 0808 100 1039. James Dundon.
BBC Radio Cornwall.
Fuel prices, you won't fail to have noticed, driving around, or even just looking at the papers over the weekend. But the price of fuel is continuing to rise, and we've spotted really high prices in Cornwall. I think they said the average price, what was it? It was, I keep forgetting, because we got so many figures coming in now, I keep forgetting. So apparently the average is 148 for petrol, 151 for diesel. Well, I've seen higher than that. I've seen 155 for diesel. If you go to one of the A30 service stations, they ramp it up a little bit. So how are they allowed just to, charge anything they like, it seems? We'll speak to the RAC a bit later on after 11 and try and find out how fuel prices are decided and what's pushing the price up at the minute. Is it the tensions in Ukraine pushing up oil? Let's catch up with the local business and see how it affects them. Steve Smith is the owner of Essa Taxis based in Saltash. Hi, Steve.
Yeah, good morning, James. Good morning.
Have I got that right? Is it Essa? You pronounce
Yeah, it is. It's the Cornish word for Saltash.
Is it right? Okay, so Essa Taxis up in Saltash. Yeah. You, I think, Steve, are well known for freezing your prices. You, against all the odds, everything that's happened, pushing up prices over the last 5 years, you've kept your taxi fares the same.
Yes, we have. We started literally 5 years ago next month. And as a new business, clearly we needed to start from ground zero with no customers. So we needed to attract customers, so we thought a proposition of sensible pricing would work well. So
I'm sure that was very popular with the locals. You must, though, have felt the pinch personally, because you are the owner and driver of said taxi company. You must have noticed, less income, surely, if you're paying out more but not putting your prices up over 5 years.
Yeah, no, definitely. As our business grew, it was sort of masked in a little way, James, because as our turnover went up with more and more business, our percentage profit was actually deteriorating on per job. But as we were doing more jobs, we were therefore making the same amount of money. But yeah, over the last 4 to 5 years, fuel prices, I think they were about 120 5 years ago, and then now, as you just mentioned, about £1.50. So they're up the best part of sort of 25-30%. Our taxi insurance is up. Cornwall Council every year put up the fees to become a taxi driver and to license a taxi vehicle. They tend to go up 14 line with cost of living annually. So everything's on the way up. But the biggest, by far, for any taxi operation, its biggest cost is fuel.
And these fuel prices, is this a tipping point now? Are you going to have to put your prices up, Steve?
Yeah, we are on Monday coming. We are putting our prices up. We've issued some notices on social media. We've got Facebook and Instagram and what have you. And so we've let all our customers, as far as we can, that we're having to put our prices up. And what we'll do from next Monday, as we carry our regular customers, we will still carry them at the old rate and then tell them face to face that it's got to go up from the next trip. We've made some early signings with our customers. They understand that we've had our prices fixed for so long, but they also understand it's all around us, isn't it? Every time we switch to BBC News on, it's the cost of living going up, food going up. So everything's going up everywhere at the moment.
So talk to me about other costs as well. So, for instance, I think for running a taxi company, you've got to pay Cornwall Council like a licensing fee of some kind, haven't you? Has the price of that remained static, or does that seem to go up in increments like everything else?
No, that tends to go up broadly in line with cost of living. I think it was about 3 weeks ago I had an email off the Cornwall Council saying their fees are going up again. I mean, in simple numbers for people to understand, a taxi vehicle, each vehicle has to have a plate on the back. That costs about £250 a year. Each driver has to have a taxi accredited licence. You apply for that over 3 years, and it's just over £300 for 3 years, so that's like £100 a year. Then the vehicle itself has to have 2 taxi MOTs, which are a higher grade than a normal MOT, and they tend to work out, a couple of £100 each, so that's sort of £400 a year. Taxi insurance, that's quite high compared to normal insurance. I would imagine, it depends which region and your experience and your no-claims bonus, but when I started 4 years ago, I was paying £3,000 a year in insurance. And that's because you're on the road, on average, about 8 times more than a normal driver, because you're spending sort of 8-9 hours a day on the road.
So the only way to make up the shortfall, Steve, is to pass the costs onto us, frankly.
Well, like most businesses, we have a fixed cost. Those are fixed costs. My car, the 250 for the plate on the back, that would be the same whether I took the car off the drive every morning or didn't use it at all. But the biggest variable cost, and to statisticians, currently our fuel costs are 18% of our income. So for every pound we take off a customer, 18 pence goes into the tank.
Later,
and that's going up because of rising fuel prices. We run a hybrid car now, and we run a very fuel efficient, one of the most fuel efficient diesel taxis, but they cost money. So you buy them to save fuel, but on the other hand, they have much greater acquisition cost to buy them. And also, your average taxi driver does anything between 40 and 50,000 miles a year. So within two, maximum 3 years, you effectively destroy a car. So its value goes to virtually zero. People don't tend to want to buy a car with 200,000 miles on the clock.
No. What should happen, Steve? Do you think the government needs to step in and reduce fuel duty or scrap the VAT on fuel? Do you think Cornwall Council should help you out with the cost of your taxi licence? What can be done?
Well, I think on fuel, a lot of it is tax-driven. I think a high percentage of the cost of fuel is tax. So it's certainly within the government's remit to try and help. But then again, it's within the government's remit to help people with their fuel energy bills. I mean, you've just got a current inflationary cycle within the country, so it's very difficult to see what can be done about it. I think you also, in the introduction to this, hit on a very interesting point, is the differential in the prices at various petrol stations. And it does seem to me at times, if you're on like the A38, they seem to be charging motorway prices, or if you're in a place like Lou where there's only one BP station, they've got to drive miles to go to another petrol station. The petrol company seems to take advantage that they know they've almost got a mini monopoly there. I think for the big brands, it would be very nice to see them just have like a national pricing strategy.
Yeah, okay, some sort of cap in there, some sort of... Because it is, you don't know when they're going to go up. There's no transparency. You just drive past a petrol station and go, blimey, it's gone up again. Hey, Steve, as a taxi driver, give me a bit of small talk. What sort of things do people talk to you about when you're a taxi driver? You can't exactly talk about going on holiday in these times, can you?
No, we get the two classic ones are always, are you busy today?
Yeah, busy night.
And then it tends to be football or the weather.
Oh, the weather. The great British conversation. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about this week with the weather. Hey, look, I
don't want to get too political, but we've noticed within the last year people want to talk much more politics, which is a good thing.
Okay, well that's... I'm not surprised. Steve, lovely to have you on, mate. Wish you all the best. Thanks for joining us. That's Steve Smith, owner of Essa Taxis. They're based in Saltash. What do you reckon about the price of fuel? God, we have so many messages coming up. This Paul says, why are prices going up? Greed. That's why businesses and companies are simply jumping on the bandwagon to recoup losses after the here's an interesting story, dog fouling. Have you noticed a lot of dog fouling around Cornwall recently? Well, there's a fine that's been handed out, £1,354. What? For dog fouling? This chap apparently wasn't picking up after his dog, and he got a fine of over £1,000 because he didn't pay the initial fine, and then the fees ended up escalating. Look, no one wants to see doggy doos on the streets and the paths, but what's it like being an enforcement officer trying to police this sort of thing? Kevin Brader is Cornwall Council's Community Protection Team Manager. How you doing, Kevin?
Hey, good morning, how are you?
Yeah, fine. What day job you got? How long you been doing this in Cornwall?
Well, I've done this current job for 3 years, but I've been working within environmental health in Cornwall since 2003, so quite a while.
And is it just the little presents that doggies leave behind that you police, or is it other things as well?
Well, my team looks after noisy neighbour complaints, fly tipping, other environmental crimes, as well as the dog welfare enforcement service.
All the fun stuff, right? Okay. So, what is the biggest problem in Cornwall at the minute? Would you say what do the most fines get handed out for?
Well, we publish all of our externally noticed stats on the council's website, and there's quite a range of dog fouling, dogs on beaches, littering, and fly tipping in terms of our SPN, or externally noticed offences. But you know, obviously we're getting involved in other enforcement work around dealing with impacts of noise from neighbours, as well as abandoned vehicle issues too. So it's quite a wide range. So you can't really pin anything in particular that stands out more than the others. There's a lot of work. We're always very busy.
And is that one of the big? I think you said that dogs on beaches is one of the biggest sort of fines that you hand out. Is that a big problem? Is it dogs being on beaches when they shouldn't be in Cornwall?
I mean, it's no more than other issues that we deal with. I wouldn't say it stands out more than fouling. I mean, certainly within our team, we prioritise fouling over dogs on beaches because of the nature of the incident and the impact it can have on people.
And what are people like when you approach them and give them a fine? I mean, what do? Do you have a chat with